COVID-19 allowed us to live the remote dream, but did we do it right? To give you a little background on who I am, my name is Hannah Hewling. I joined Mishik and Associates in 2016 and started working remotely as an EI a year and a half after that. We are an engineering consulting firm based out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, right off the Arkansas River in the photo above. We specialize in H&H engineering, civil and roadway design, GIS, planning, right-of-way, land survey, and LiDAR scanning. Our purpose hits home for me and leads to my favorite Mishek fun fact. In the 2019 Oklahoma floods, we partnered with the Army Corps and performed the real-time floodplain mapping to inform communities downstream of the Keystone Dam of their flood risk. This information allowed communities to then inform their residents if and when they needed to evacuate their homes. When I moved to Denver, my bosses joked that I would switch companies within 6 months because of my outgoing extrovert personality and because of how much I value my coworkers. Due to these characteristics, it was a bit of a change at first, but I soon adapted to the remote lifestyle and ultimately fell in love with it. When I started working remotely, I was one of 2 full-time remote employees. No one could have imagined that the majority of our company and essentially the entire world would be working remotely in 2020. Yet it happened to all of us. Although the experience of working at home during the pandemic may have not been ideal for everyone, we need to remind ourselves that the world literally shut down. Whole families sheltered in place. We did not leave our homes. We worked with crying children in the background, and we maybe even worked with our significant other crying in the background. I mean, the NBA and March Madness shut down, for goodness sake. To essentially say the entire world was at peak stress would be an understatement. However, we need to remember how we were in peak hope too. I know you all remember the Denver House at 8 o'clock every night. Despite high COVID stresses, the pandemic gave people a taste of what remote work could be like. And guess what? It's unlikely we will go back to the way that it was. We can try to go back, but there really isn't a need to now because we have new tools to optimize remote work even better now. This is an overview of what we will discuss for enhanced remote employee productivity, happiness, and revamped work-life balance. There's no way to sugarcoat it. The pandemic is terrible. Let's start by taking a moment for all lives lost and impacted in the pandemic and for our frontline workers. We're all going through different shades of hardship or isolation. However, in a rainstorm of unfortunate events, we not only have the personnel to calculate the frequency storm event we're experiencing, we also have the dream team to identify that one positive raindrop and reflect on what we might want to keep versus what we never want to live through again. It has been said that we should never let a serious crisis go to waste. Crises can be rare opportunities to attack old challenges in new and innovative ways. So, let's do it. To start things off, we'll review the pros and cons of remote work. The first advantage is the financial gain it presents to both the employer and the employee. A company could save around $11,000 per year per employee working from home about half the time. These savings come from reduced overhead, real estate costs, and employee absences. This is extremely beneficial to the employer because unscheduled absences cost employers roughly $1,800 per year per employee. Additional savings come from continuity of operations, increased productivity, and employee retention. Employee retention is great news because losing a valued employee can cost an employer 10 to 30 grand, and recruiting and training a new employee costs thousands more. Remote employee savings are estimated at around $4,000 per year. The next pro is the optimization of productivity. I love seeing my fellow employees in the office, but we must acknowledge how much those conversations cost. Working from home results in fewer interruptions, less distractions, a quieter work environment, less or more efficient meetings, and less office politics. Adding on the lack of a commute, remote workers have more time, which benefits both employees and employers alike. The Denver Business Journal averaged Denver's rush hour commute as 93 minutes a day in 2017. You might ask yourself or your employer, what you would do with an extra 400 hours per year. Assuming a $65,000 salary, that is an extra $12,500 earned if you chose to work those hours instead of driving them. Let's not fail to mention the impacts of driving stress. A daily commute can raise blood sugars, cholesterol, heart rates, blood pressure, anxiety, and the risk of depression. It also appears that commuters have lower life satisfaction, a lower sense that their daily activities are worthwhile, lower levels of happiness, and less sleep than people with no commutes. More lost workdays, more late arrivals, higher employee turnover, and decreased job satisfaction are all linked to driving. So, commuting results in lower productivity for your employer too. No commutes also result in environmental savings. Further environmental savings come from the cost of running the office being twice that of a home office. There are also fewer sick days for remote employees because teleworkers typically work at least part-time when they're sick. Lastly is the benefit of additional personal time. For some, it might be spending more time with your family, and for others, it might be more biking, reading, or mountain time. Regardless of how your employees spend their time, the ultimate accomplishment is that they are generally happier with a remote option. Although work-life balance and less stress were cited among the top benefits of working remotely, more engineers reported feeling lonelier in 2020 compared to 2019. Furthermore, some people do not know how to handle non-traditional working hours. Another con is the financial loss of higher housing or increased electric and internet bills for remote employees. Harvard University showed that spending was 7% higher for remote households, mostly because of more rooms and a higher price per room. This has been the case for me because I value having an office that's not located in my bedroom. The Harvard researchers went on to state that companies that save money on office rent need to consider offering compensation to remote workers to cover their work-related housing costs. Lastly, the increased costs employers may have come from higher technological costs when paying for remote access platforms, additional computers and screens, and data theft or fraud risk protection programs. Now, let's address those cons. Up until a few weeks ago, corporate leaders felt confident about what to expect this fall. However, the fast-spreading Delta variant has managers revamping schedules and bosses delaying office reopenings and canceling events. Major companies have postponed fall returns to 2022 or haven't given reopening dates at all. Despite these challenges, we will focus on how the hybrid model is taking center stage so employers and employees can take advantage of the unique opportunity the pandemic has presented to us to decide on a combination of remote and on-site work. It is obvious that I've fallen in love with remote work, but let's not kid ourselves. We are all humans, and humans have an innate nature to socialize and interact with one another. How we dictate those interactions mostly relies on our employer. Yes, some employees need to be physically present to receive mail or deal with sensitive information in the office. However, employees who spend 4 to 6 hours by themselves at their desk can just as easily work elsewhere. So, who is the best candidate for working remotely? Let's look at the statistics. When looking at young children at home who need attention during the day, mothers are far more likely to prefer working at home than the parental unit. I worked in our office before moving to a fully remote position. This allowed me to fully appreciate our work culture, learn the ins and outs of my job expectations, and develop face-to-face relationships with the engineers I collaborate with. Thus, you may consider whether an employee is new or has been newly promoted and needs to be in the office to work closely with their supervisor. You might also ask yourself, is it you who wants the employee on site, or if they are experienced enough to start as a fully remote employee? Regardless of when an employee begins their remote career, leaders need to ensure that all employees have a sense of belonging and that no group is more valued, supported, or developed than another. Extroverts and introverts vary considerably. When the pandemic closed the physical doors of a training organization, its introverted senior manager became more productive right away. This is because many introverts accomplish more at home than a busy and draining office environment. Regardless of identifying as an introvert or extrovert, the best candidates for working remotely have passions and interests outside of work. They work efficiently and are strong performers because they see work as a means to fund their life. On the opposite side of the work pendulum are people with whom work is their life. They feel compelled to be in the office. 26% of adults in the US live with a disability, so it is likely that 1 in 4 of your employees do too. People who suffer from anxiety and depression split about 50-50 when working remotely. Those who enjoy working remotely often get anxious and feel uncomfortable with small talk conversations in the office. When they are at home, they could focus on the task at hand without being anxious that someone will have an unwanted conversation with them. On the other hand, the isolation of working from home can sometimes exacerbate the condition of a socially anxious individual. So, reach out to your employee and ask what's best for them. People who take daily medications work well at home due to it being easier for them to fix that medical condition at home than leaving the office and missing an entire day of work. Let's not fail to mention how embarrassing it might be for people in wheelchairs if company items such as microwaves or printers are placed out of reach. People with disabilities already have to face much more in everyday life, so we might as well make it easier for them to work successfully. Lastly, Gen Z generally prefer to be in the office. It is known that the prevailing consensus among companies is the flexible hybrid system. One of the biggest holdbacks of CEOs being willing to let their employees work from home is trust. Managers are used to managing by counting people in seats rather than by results. And that's not managing, that's babysitting. When clients ask, how will I know if they're working? As a manager, we might ask them back, how do you know they're working now? The employee is likely submitting all of their deliverables regardless of where they are working. The Google CEO offered some perspective by writing that, for more than 20 years, our employees have been coming to the office to solve problems. Our campuses have been at the heart of the Google community. However, many of us would also enjoy the flexibility of working from home a couple days a week, spending time in another city for part of the year, or even moving somewhere else permanently. Therefore, Google's future workplace will have room for all of these possibilities. So, there you have it. One of the biggest companies in the world now has the option for a hybrid work model. Next, we will discuss non-traditional working hours. An important aspect of working remotely is maintaining a routine. Try to wake up at the same time every day and don't go to work in your pajamas. I also like to keep an emergency professional wardrobe in my home office in case I get ambushed by a professional work call. When I worked in the main office, Mishak already had somewhat of a flex schedule due to engineers coming into the office anywhere between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. So a 1-hour time difference was not difficult. One of our previous owners moved to Seattle, so he starts his day 2 hours after the main office does. However, if a client requests an 8 a.m. meeting at Central Standard Time, then we are happy to attend that meeting at 6 and 7 a.m. in our corresponding time zones. Nevertheless, acknowledge the benefits of measuring results and accepting that an employee's most productive working hours might be outside of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. This is definitely the case with our previous owner in Seattle. He works incredibly well after dark. I have received a few emails from him in the wee hours of the night because that is the time he is the most productive. And we honor that. As a company, we want employees to work when they are the most productive while also attending collaborative meetings that may happen during normal business hours. It saves us money and it saves the client money. It also increases employee happiness and the feelings of worthiness and being respected. To avoid time zone confusion, require that your company pick one time zone and stick with it. Have you ever second-guessed yourself into not sending a late-night email because it might be intrusive on that person's private time? Well, you're not alone. When I first joined Mishak, I was petrified I would miss answering an email outside of normal business hours. Fortunately, it soon became apparent that being constantly connected to the office was not a requirement for the majority of the roles at our office. This is one of the reasons why I love Mishak. I feel like I am treated like a human who has a life outside of my career while simultaneously meeting my career goals. I will also acknowledge there are times around deadlines when my team is communicating outside of normal business hours. However, that is not the norm, and the lifestyle of the person is always kept in mind. If I want to continue working later than a coworker, then I will add a note to the end of my email that acknowledges that. It may read something like, I know you were at dinner, so please enjoy your dinner plans and do not respond to this now. I am sending this now because I am focused on this action item and I want it to be ready for you first thing in the morning. A different option is utilizing the delayed delivery function so you could set the exact time and date for an email to be sent to someone. Regardless of what hours you work, the number one thing you need to do with a flexible remote schedule is keep that calendar updated. If you have an appointment, then put it on your calendar and account for driving time too. Another recommendation is to use time blocking. This is to set aside intentional time to work on a specific task at hand to increase focus time and productivity. Many remote workers in the pandemic found it hard to stop working at the end of the day. When I first started my remote position, I often found myself working until 7 or 8 p.m. because that is when my roommates would come home from their work and their corresponding work happy hours. So I understand how this was difficult in the pandemic. I even had to ask my partner to stop working a few times because I was ready to make dinner and worry about the world ending with him. I'm just kidding, but definitely not. Definitely not kidding. To get around this, set an alarm clock to clock out at the end of the day. Working too much will lead to burnout, and no one likes that. It leads to more mistakes on a project. Also, do not be that employee who calls your coworkers while they are on vacation. Sending an email is fine if they know it is there for them when they return to the office. However, inundating them with phone calls while they are on vacation is just not okay. Some people worry about what to do when an employee lives or travels to a significantly different time zone. When I worked remotely in Hawaii in 2019, I generally worked from 4 a.m. to 1 p.m. This is because I was one of 2 remote employees, so I did not want to inconvenience my coworkers. Although some may cringe at the 4 a.m. starting time, I really enjoyed this because my body was still used to being on Mountain Standard Time, and I was able to see the beautiful sunrise while also surfing the sunset. I don't know about you, but if I can get a full workday in and surf, I view that as the peak of civilization. Kind of like this wave on the bottom right that I killed back in 2019. Just kidding. That's definitely Carissa Moore, our USA Olympic surfer and gold medalist. Next, we will go over how to combat loneliness. How many people have heard the phrase, your partner cannot be everything to you. You need friends too. Well, your remote job cannot be everything to you as well. So get out there and join your professional clubs. The first thing I did when I moved to Colorado was contact the president of ASCE to join the officer team. I did this to meet fellow engineers in Denver, supplement my professional friendships from Oklahoma, and to push myself to communicate with others. A few of my favorite organizations are listed on this slide, as well as photos of the CASFM YMG paint night and my friend Peyton Gibson, who helped write the Colorado Infrastructure Report Card. Working remotely will invariably have an impact on people's physical health. However, it doesn't necessarily have to be a negative one. The commuting time saved can be rerouted into exercise. When I was initially working remotely, I quickly realized I needed to see more people in my day-to-day life, like a lot more people. So I purchased a gym membership where I later saw fellow CASFA members. Before recognizing fellow engineers and floodplain managers, I took the initiative to ask friendly faces to exchange phone numbers so we could develop a friendship over staying active. Don't be afraid to ask a colleague or random stranger to be your workout buddy. Just make sure you do it respectively. Many people find themselves never getting up for a break when working remotely. This is because of the limited number of distractions at home versus the office. So set an alarm to get up and stretch. Additional options to stay active include enjoying a solo dance party, pulling weeds in the garden, starting the day with a plain cold, and my personal favorite is using the bathroom on the opposite side of the house. I work in the second story of my house, so I always use the bathroom on the first floor to earn those extra cookie credits. In times of social isolation, there's nothing quite like the comfort of a fur baby amidst the chaos of a worldwide pandemic. Upon realizing the pandemic was not going away as quickly as we had originally anticipated, my partner and I decided to foster. For the animals, the benefits are without question. Let's not forget the benefits to humans as well. Scientific study after study has found that pets can raise our levels of oxytocin, the so-called love hormone. The impact has been especially profound during the pandemic. New research found that sharing a home with a pet provided a buffer against negative psychological effects of the pandemic-related lockdown. Additionally, if you want someone to hold you accountable for those morning or evening walks, there is no one better than a smiling dog to get you out of the house. The communication needs of a remote team are more complex than an in-office team. As managers, we need to understand the nuances and challenges of communicating well in a remote team setting. Video calls can help make the person feel connected to you via face-to-face communication. Using the call feature in Teams is a great way to communicate the needs of a project or a specific task. After communicating that specific task, put some clear communication in writing. Coach your team to write detailed emails with as much information as possible. This will avoid confusion, misunderstanding, and miscommunication because everything is clearly written out. There are a multitude of platforms and tools you can use for managing a team. So identify which platform to use for video calls, both internally and externally. When you are in an office environment, someone who did not feel comfortable speaking up during a meeting can simply walk into your office to share their views afterwards. Remember to encourage your coworkers and employees that their views matter and that they can message you on one-on-one Teams or email options. Messaging one-on-one is also a great option for introverted people. Schedule check-ins and virtual team building activities with your remote employees. They're going to enjoy hearing from you and hearing updates about the company. Also, invite them on interview practice meetings to facilitate growth within your company. I'm sure we have all received a text message from someone and have thought, are they mad at me? Remember to be careful with the uses of exclamation points and emojis. Also, watch out for a virtual unconscious bias where punctuation, grammar, and word choice might reveal prejudices or attitudes towards certain groups. The next topic is fraud risk. Employees working remotely from unsecured networks can make company data more vulnerable to cybercrime. Companies can mitigate this risk by using the techniques on the slide above. Next, we will discuss which civil engineering software are most compatible for working in areas with variable Wi-Fi, like an airplane. Softwares that operate online or have large amounts of data should not be used in areas with low internet speeds. Examples of software that require high internet speeds or high graphic use are on the left, whereas software that can be used with low internet speeds can be seen on the right. Ultimately, you need to test your system out and figure out what remote setting it works best in. Last, we will review the ultimate remote office setup in the house, at the coffee shop, and in the Airbnb. During an annual review of mine, about a year and a half after I started working remotely, my boss asked if I am as efficient working remotely at home as I am while traveling. I took that opportunity to remind him of 5 things. First, I worked remotely at my house for over a year to work out any remote inefficiencies before working remotely while traveling. Second, I invested in myself by purchasing a 17.3-inch laptop screen with a high-functioning processor and a number pad. I knew how often I utilized the number pad at the office, so I wanted to maintain that efficiency while traveling. I worked with 2 screens at my home office, so I bought a portable monitor to maintain a 2-screen efficiency. The remote setup in the photo you see on the right will fit in my company backpack, the perfect carry-on. Although it is super heavy and hurts my shoulders on long trips, it is worth every ounce and every dollar because I get to see my family while using it. Fourth, I travel with an Ethernet cord, so I could plug straight into a Wi-Fi source wherever I travel. And fifth, I call my friend, family, or cafe I am working at to inquire what the internet speed is before working there. Our home office operates at roughly 45 megabytes per second, so I do not travel anywhere that operates at a lower internet speed than this, for it is not fair to my employer due to lag times and lack of efficiency. I am sure the majority of you saw the video of the cat lawyer. Although this provided a good laugh, you do not want to be that person while pitching a proposal or interviewing a new hire. What I like about our company background is the light in the middle. It centers around your face and makes you the focal point. Other great options for video backgrounds can be seen in the slide above. No one likes unbalanced lighting. Despite window blinds being closed, they could still let in a lot of light that can be distracting for video participants. So, what should you do? Buy a ring light. They may seem like something only TikTok influencers use, but I promise you that it will make you look like a model even when it's daytime. Combine a ring light with a blackout shade and you are set up for success. Lastly, do a test run. I like to send myself a calendar invite and test out my camera before a big meeting. This ensures that I can focus on the content of the meeting and not worry about what I look like. I live in a lovely Colorado home with no central air conditioning and an attic fan. It's normally not a problem, but with our early 100-degree weeks in June, an air conditioning window unit is absolutely necessary to survive a full working day remotely. Many of my coworkers do not mind the air conditioning in the background, but it is not the best option when speaking with a client for the first time or ever. To fix this, cool down the room before you meet with a client or mute yourself. This may be an unpopular opinion, but if you have a screaming child in the background, it is not going to bother me in the slightest. You created a human life. They are children, they are learning, and I am probably trying to learn from you. And odds are, I can simply ask you to repeat something if I did not hear it the first time. Hearing kids can also create empathy for your coworkers. It takes a village to raise a family, and I'm not going to be the person in that village complaining about your crying baby. However, if your client or company does care, then you might hire a sitter for important meetings or do what's best for your kids to keep them distracted during that time. In terms of roommates, I like to put sticky notes on the front door and the office door. The sticky note could read something along the lines of, "Happy you're home. I'm on a call that should last for at least another hour. Can you minimize noise levels in the house until about 5:30 p.m.? Thanks. Can't wait to hear how your day was." And lastly, this may be another unpopular opinion, but I'm probably going to love your barking dog, meowing cat, or miscellaneous crashes in the background from the cat knocking off random items on a shelf. I am a millennial after all, and apparently plants are the new pets and pets are the new babies. So bring that pupper straight up to the camera to break the ice. I am here for it. I want to support what is important to you. And if that is your plant, pet, or child, then let's enjoy the simple pleasures of life together, work hard, and get it done. So, did you live the remote dream right? Maybe you did. If so, I'm going to be your biggest cheerleader and welcome conversation to discuss what worked for you. I at least hope you learned something valuable in this presentation. And if you are the boss, then maybe now you're a little more willing to let your employees work remotely at least part of the time. And lastly, we need to remind ourselves that remote work is not for everyone. Just because it might not work for you does not mean it does not work for your fellow coworker or employee. Also, remember, remote work presents an opportunity to guarantee your employees are happy with their options and work-life balance, so they can give more to your company, more to your clients, and more to themselves. These are my references. Thank you so much. If we don't have time for questions, then feel free to reach out to me via email or phone or catch me at one of the CASMA events this week. Thanks again. Have a great day.